Good evening, I'm Meteorologist Chris Ramirez with your tropics update. And yes, snowstorms are going to affect southeast Texas, but there is some important storm activity happening in the Pacific and Atlantic basins that are causing a stir, especially out in some portions of the country. So as we look at hurricane season in terms of our peak of hurricane season, usually for Texas, we see that activity start ramping down and become less active, especially as these fall cold fronts keeps all those tropical systems well away from us, which is very good news. So we're seeing the tropical activity starting to wind down, especially as we head away from the peak of hurricane season. So as we look at our 2025 Atlantic Basin names, we've already crossed off Jerry and Karen. Those were two tropical storms. Jerry's still churning in the Atlantic. Humberto was a Category 5 hurricane, which was the strongest hurricane that we saw. We actually had Aaron, which was a Category 5 hurricane as well. So as you look at Jerry right now, it's currently moving over the Atlantic, and that's expected to remain over open water, not posing a threat to anyone. Just going to continue tracking off towards the north and eventually to the east, eventually weakening into a tropical depression by next Tuesday. As far as the big picture, we have post-tropical cyclone Karen. That was briefly a tropical storm that has weakened and fizzled out into pretty much nothing as it moves off towards the northeast. But let's take a look at what's happening across the Pacific Basin. Some folks, especially out in the desert southwest, really have to be paying attention to the incoming moisture that's currently moving into southern Arizona and New Mexico. So we have post-tropical cyclone Priscilla and tropical storm Raymond, which those are going to remain over open water. As we look at the radar right now, we have some heavy rain happening across Arizona, especially some showers now moving into Phoenix. And this is really not good news for this region. This is the desert southwest. It does not take much to cause flash flooding, especially as we deal with those flood concerns for areas west of Texas. So as we look at the current flood watches, mostly the entire state of Arizona under flood watches through Sunday, and that is going to be the case at least through the start of next week. Here's a look at the rainfall potential as we head into this weekend. Some areas likely could get between 2 and 4 inches of rainfall, especially as we head into next Tuesday. So it's not really good news for areas across Arizona and New Mexico. And just keep in mind, when it comes to desert weather, it really just only takes 1 to 2 inches of rain that really does cause those raging floods, especially as we saw there a couple of weeks ago. So dangers of desert flooding: 2 or 3 inches of rain could cause flash flooding pretty quickly. Usually 2 or 3 inches of rain is pretty much tolerable for us here across the southeast Texas area because of our grounds. We don't have that dry air. Our grounds are pretty porous, and that can absorb all of that moisture. But as you look at the dangers of desert flooding, fast moving water can carry away a car. So folks that are heading out to that region really going to have to pay attention to the rainfall forecast, especially in the next 2 to 3 days. So for us, we have a high pressure system in place that's going to keep us mostly quiet and dry, but that is going to keep those tropical systems well offshore as we go to the next few days. So that's some good news for us as we wind our hurricane season down. So looking at Tropical Storm Jerry, that was a storm that was near the Leeward Islands. That was continuing to move off to the north. Our latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center, this was yesterday, where they were forecasting this to become a Category 1 hurricane, but it's really not showing that much strengthening as we continue to see that storm moving off towards the north. Right now it has 50-mile-an-hour winds. That's at the 4 p.m. advisory, moving north-northwest between 15 miles an hour. That's going to continue a more northern track over open water, eventually weakening into a tropical depression. And so post-tropical cyclone Karen, well offshore, not posing a threat to the U.S., and same thing with Jerry as well. It's this remnant of Priscilla that is going to cause some problems for the desert southwest, especially in the coming days. So for this weekend, it's looking like a pretty wet weekend for areas west of Texas, and we could see some of those showers moving into far west Texas. But for us, mostly dry. We have high pressure system in place over the south central U.S., and that's going to keep conditions mostly quiet for us and just give us a dose of that fall-like weather, especially in those morning hours for us here across southeast Texas. So if you're heading off towards the west, maybe you're catching a flight to Las Vegas or Arizona or Phoenix, they're going to have a lot of weather that they're going to have to go through, especially as we head off towards the west. Even portions of Southern California are looking likely that they're going to see more of these showers. And then, like I said, this is usually a pretty dry area, and they are looking at some heavy rain that is now moving into Southern California, into Arizona. So make sure to check those flights if you are leaving and heading off towards the west or flying out of Houston for the next for this weekend. I can only imagine this might cause some potential delays in our flights, especially as they could see some flooding concerns. I think there's actually a flash flood warning in place just north of Phoenix in the next few hours. So flash flood watches in place for Southern California through Arizona. That does include areas further towards the north, even Colorado. We have a lot of travel plans as we get closer to the cooler months. So even Denver, just west of Denver, and portions of Utah, looking at those flood watches that will be in place, all thanks to the remnants of Priscilla, which was a Pacific Ocean system. So quiet in the middle of the south central U.S., not posing a threat to us. We're going to be mostly quiet, but we will see probably some footage coming out of Arizona of possible flooding as we head into the next couple of days, like we saw previously about a couple of weeks ago. So looking at the peak of hurricane season, we are expecting those conditions to once again start winding down for us. Usually as we wrap up hurricane season, we didn't really have any landfalling hurricanes. Most of those storms remained well offshore. As we head closer towards the end, it's pretty well possible that we could see some of those storms in the months of October, but like I said, we have a front that just blew through, brought us some dry air, and it's keeping those systems well away from us. But it's just an important reminder that hurricane season still lasts until November 30th. So that's all I have for you in terms of the tropics. Definitely seeing some rain activity off towards the west for the desert southwest, but mostly dry for us here across southeast Texas, especially as we head into the next few days. And as always, we're tracking the latest weather forecasts and the latest weather updates on KHOU.com and on the KHOU